Billionaire woman got stuck in a blizzard. A poor dad took her in and got more than he hoped for. Mercedes-Benz gay wagon carved through the Montana wilderness like a silver bullet, its heated leather seats a stark contrast to the growing storm. Outside, Victoria Sterling gripped the steering wheel tighter, her Cartier watch catching the dashboard light as she checked the time again. "Damn it," she muttered, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the wheel. The quarterly board meeting in Billings was in 3 hours, and this unexpected detour through the backwoods was eating into her schedule. Her assistant had warned her about the weather, but Victoria Sterling didn't let weather or anything else dictate her plans. The snow had started as gentle flakes an hour ago. Now it was a full assault, thick and merciless, turning the mountain road into a treacherous white maze. Her phone showed no signal. The GPS had lost connection 20 minutes back, and the fuel gauge was hovering dangerously close to empty. "This is ridiculous," she said to no one, her breath visible in the suddenly cold air. The heater had died 10 minutes ago, along with what seemed to be half the car's electrical system. That's when she saw the smoke dot thin and gray against the white sky. It rose from somewhere beyond the trees like a beacon of hope. Victoria had built her empire on calculated risks, and right now, following that smoke was the only logical choice. She turned the wheel, the luxury SUV lurching as it left the main road for what could barely be called a path. The cabin appeared through the snow like something from a Christmas card log walls, a stone chimney, warm light glowing from frost-covered windows. A battered pickup truck sat in the driveway, half buried under snow, next to a woodpile that had seen better days. Victoria parked and stepped out, her designer boots immediately sinking into 6 inches of powder. The cold hit her like a physical blow, cutting through her expensive wool coat as if it were tissue paper. She'd dressed for boardrooms, not blizzards. The porch creaked under her feet as she approached the door. Through the window, she could see the interior modest furniture, a fire crackling in a stone fireplace, and a man sitting at a small table with a young girl, both of them bent over what looked like homework. She knocked, sharp and businesslike. Door opened to reveal a man in his mid-30s, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans that had seen honest work. His brown hair was slightly mussed, and concern immediately filled his blue eyes as he took in her appearance, clearly not dressed for a Montana winter. "Ma'am, are you all right?" "My car broke down," Victoria said, fighting to keep her teeth from chattering. "I need to use your phone." The man stepped aside immediately. "Of course, come in. You must be freezing." He called over his shoulder, "Emma, honey, we have a visitor." The warmth of the cabin enveloped Victoria like an embrace. The interior was simple but clean handmade furniture, family photos on the mantle, and the kind of lived-in comfort that money couldn't buy. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, looked up from her homework with bright, curious eyes. "I'm Jake Morrison," the man said, closing the door behind her. "This is my daughter, Emma." "Victoria Sterling," she replied automatically, then caught herself. The name would mean nothing to them, and for some reason, that felt like a relief. "I just need to make a call and arrange for a tow truck." Jake gestured toward an old rotary phone on the kitchen counter. "Help yourself, though I should warn you, the lines have been acting up with the storm." Victoria lifted the receiver and heard nothing but static. She tried again, adjusting the cord, but the result was the same. "It's not working." "Yeah, that happens when the weather gets bad up here." Jake moved to the window, peering out at the storm. "Looks like it's getting worse too. The main road's probably already impassable." "What do you mean impassable?" Victoria's voice carried an edge of panic she rarely let show. "Winter storms up here can last for days," Jake explained gently. "Once the snow gets deep enough, nothing moves until the plows can get through. And with the power lines down ... He gestured toward the phone. Victoria stared at him, her mind racing through scenarios and solutions. She had a company to run, meetings to attend, deals to close. She couldn't be stranded in the middle of nowhere with ... with people who probably didn't even have Wi-Fi. There has to be something, she said, pulling out her phone. No signal, not even one bar. I'm sorry, Jake said, and he genuinely sounded it. But you're welcome to stay here until the storm passes. We don't have much, but we've got food, warmth, and a couch that's more comfortable than it looks. Emma had been watching the exchange with wide eyes. Daddy, is the pretty lady going to stay for dinner? Victoria looked down at the child, noting the slightly worn clothes, the homework spread across a table that had seen better days. The way Jake's eyes tightened almost imperceptibly at his daughter's innocent question. These people were struggling, and she was about to become a burden they probably couldn't afford. I can pay, Victoria said quickly. For the food, the inconvenience. You don't need to pay us anything. Jake interrupted, his voice firm but not unkind. We help people. That's what neighbors do. The word neighbors struck Victoria oddly. In her world, neighbors were competitors, rivals, obstacles to overcome. The idea of helping someone simply because they needed help was foreign. I insist, she said, reaching for her purse. I don't want charity. Something shifted in Jake's expression. It's not charity, Miss Sterling. It's just being human. The words hung in the air between them, and Victoria found herself without a response. She was used to transactions, to exchanges of value, to everything having a price. This man was offering her shelter with no expectation of return, and she didn't know how to process that. Can I help with dinner? She asked finally, the words feeling strange in her mouth. Jake smiled, and it transformed his whole face. Sure. Emma, want to show our guest where we keep the plates? As the evening progressed, Victoria found herself in the strangest situation of her adult life. She was sitting at a worn wooden table, eating homemade chili and cornbread, listening to a 7-year-old girl chatter about her school day and her pet hamster, Mr. Whiskers. Mom used to make the best cornbread, Emma said between bites. Daddy tries, but his is always too dry. Hey now, Jake protested with mock indignation. My cornbread is perfectly adequate. What does adequate mean? Emma asked. It means it's not terrible, but it's not great either. Victoria found herself answering, then immediately regretted it when she saw Jake's expression. But instead of offense, he laughed. Well, at least she's honest. I'm sorry, Victoria said. Quickly, I didn't mean. Don't apologize for telling the truth, Jake said. Emma's right. Sarah, my wife, she was the baker in the family. I'm more of a functional cook. The past tense wasn't lost on Victoria. I'm sorry for your loss. Jake's smile dimmed slightly. Thank you. It's been 2 years now. We're doing okay, aren't we, Em? Emma nodded enthusiastically. We're a team. Daddy says we're the best team in Montana. That's right, kiddo. Jake reached over and ruffled his daughter's hair. Speaking of which, it's almost bedtime. Why don't you go brush your teeth? As Emma skipped off to the bathroom, Jake began clearing the dishes. Victoria started to help, and he looked surprised. You don't have to do that. I may not look it, but I'm capable of washing dishes, Victoria said, carrying plates to the sink. Though I'll admit, it's been a while. They worked in companionable silence for a few minutes, and Victoria found herself studying Jake's profile. He was handsome in a quiet, understated way, the kind of man who probably didn't realize his own appeal. There was something solid about him, dependable. It was a quality she'd forgotten existed. So, Jake said, handing her a dish to dry, what brings you to our corner of nowhere? You don't strike me as the mountain cabin type. Victoria considered her answer carefully. Business meeting in Billings. I was taking a shortcut. Must be. Important business to risk mountain roads in winter. It was. She paused, then found herself saying, I run a company. Several companies, actually. Real estate development, mostly. Jake nodded, not seeming particularly impressed. That sounds complicated. It is. Victoria dried another plate, remembering. Boardrooms and conference calls, and the constant pressure to grow, expand, dominate. Very complicated. Do you enjoy it? The question caught her off guard. Enjoy it? She'd never really thought about work in terms of enjoyment. Success, yes. Achievement, certainly. But enjoyment? I'm good at it. That's not the same thing, Jake observed quietly. Before Victoria could respond, Emma bounced back into the room in pajamas covered with cartoon unicorns. I'm ready for story time. Story time? Victoria asked. Daddy reads to me every night, Emma explained. Tonight it's Charlotte's Web. Do you want to listen? Victoria found herself nodding, following them to the small living room where Jake settled into a worn armchair with Emma on his lap. Victoria took the couch, feeling oddly out of place in her designer clothes in this simple, warm room. Jake's voice was gentle and expressive as he read, bringing the characters to life. Emma hung on every word, occasionally asking questions or making observations that showed she was truly engaged with the story. Victoria watched them, something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. When had she last read a book for pleasure? When had she last sat quietly, without her phone, without emails, without the constant noise of business? The silence here wasn't empty, it was full of something she couldn't quite name. As the chapter ended, Emma's eyes were drooping. Jake carried her to her bedroom, and Victoria could hear their quiet voices through the thin walls. Prayers, whispered, I love yous. The soft sound of a father tucking his daughter into bed. When Jake returned, he found Victoria standing by the fireplace, studying the family photos on the mantel. There was a wedding picture, Jake looking impossibly young in a rented tuxedo, his arm around a pretty blonde woman with Emma's bright eyes. Other photos showed the three of them at various stages: camping trips, birthdays, Christmas mornings. She was beautiful, Victoria said softly. She was, Jake agreed, joining her by the fireplace. Sarah was that she was the best person I ever knew. Always saw the good in everyone, always helping somebody. She'd have loved having you here tonight. Even though I'm clearly out of my element, Jake studied her for a moment. You're handling it better than you think. Emma likes you, that's not always a given. She's a pretty good judge of character. Victoria felt an unexpected warmth at the compliment. She's a wonderful little girl. You're doing a good job with her. I will try. Jake poked at the fire with an iron rod, sending sparks up the chimney. Some days are harder than others. Being a single parent isn't exactly what I planned for my life. What did you plan? Jake laughed, but it wasn't bitter. Nothing too grand. Thought Sarah and I would have a few more kids, maybe expand the ranch, grow old together. Simple dreams. Simple dreams are underrated, Victoria said, surprising herself with the admission. What about you? What are your dreams? Victoria opened her mouth to give her standard answer: market expansion, increased profit margins, global dominance in her sector. But looking at this man, in this warm room filled with love and loss and simple contentment, those words felt hollow. I used to dream about making my first million, she said instead. Then my first billion. Now ... She trailed off, realizing she didn't know how to finish that sentence. Now I'm not sure I remember how to dream about anything except the next deal. Jake was quiet for a moment, watching the flames dance. You know what Sarah used to say? She said dreams aren't about what you want to get. They're about what you want to give. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. What did she want? To give? She'd built her empire by taking opportunities, companies, market share. She'd never thought about what she was contributing to the world beyond profits and stock prices. Outside, the wind howled with renewed fury, rattling the windows and sending snow swirling against the glass. The storm was getting worse, if that was possible. Looks like you'll definitely be staying the night, Jake said. I'll get you some blankets for the couch. As Victoria settled onto the surprisingly comfortable sofa, wrapped in a quilt that smelled like lavender and wood smoke, she stared at the dying embers in the fireplace. This morning, she'd woken up in a penthouse suite, checking stock prices before her feet hit the marble floor. Tonight, she was falling asleep in a cabin that probably cost less than her monthly car payment. And somehow, she felt more at peace than she had in years. The last thing she heard before sleep took her was the sound of Jake moving quietly through the house, checking locks, banking the fire, taking care of his small family. It was the sound of a man who understood what really mattered, and Victoria fell asleep wondering when she'd forgotten that lesson herself. Victoria woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, and for a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came flooding back, the storm, the broken-down car, the unexpected kindness of strangers. She sat up, her back protesting from the unfamiliar sleeping arrangement, and checked her phone. Still no signal. "Good morning," Jake's voice came from the kitchen. "Hope you slept okay." Victoria stood, wrapping the quilt around her shoulders. Through the window, the world was transformed, buried under 3 feet of pristine snow that sparkled like diamonds in the morning sun. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "It stopped snowing," she observed. "For now," Jake agreed, flipping eggs in a cast-iron skillet. "But there's another band coming in this afternoon. Coffee, please." Victoria accepted the mug, gratefully inhaling the rich aroma. "This is really good." Sarah's secret, a pinch of cinnamon in the grounds. Jake's smile was tinged with memory. Some traditions are worth keeping. Emma appeared in the doorway, still in her unicorn pajamas, hair sticking up in all directions. "Morning, Victoria. Did you sleep good?" "Well," Jake corrected gently. "And yes, I think she slept well." Victoria found herself smiling at the domestic. "Scene. I slept very well, thank you. Much better than I expected." "Daddy makes the best breakfast," Emma announced, climbing onto a chair. "He puts happy faces on the pancakes with blueberries." "Emma Sterling Morrison," Jake said in mock seriousness. "You're going to give away all my secrets." The child giggled, and Victoria felt that unfamiliar warmth in her chest again. This was what a family looked like, teasing and tradition, inside jokes and genuine affection. It was nothing like the sterile efficiency of her own life. After breakfast, Jake bundled up and went outside to assess the situation. Victoria watched from the window as he trudged through the snow to her car, which was now almost completely buried. He spent several minutes digging around it, checking under the hood, then shook his head and made his way back to the house. "Well," Victoria asked as he stamped snow off his boots. "The good news is it's probably just a dead battery and some frozen lines. The bad news is even if I could get it started, you're not going anywhere until the plows come through. And with this much snow, double quotes, he shrugged, could be a couple of days." Victoria felt her carefully controlled world tilting on its axis. "I have to get back. I have meetings, obligations. The world won't end if you miss a few meetings," Jake said gently. "You don't understand. I have a hostile takeover bid to counter, 3 deals closing this week, and a board meeting that could determine the future of my company." Jake studied her with those calm blue eyes. "And if you're not there, then I could lose everything." "Everything?" The question hung between them. Victoria opened her mouth to explain about market share and stock prices and the dozens of companies that depended on her decisions, but suddenly it all seemed abstract. Important, yes, but abstract. "You know what I think?" Emma piped up from where she was coloring at the table. "I think you need a snow day." "A snow day?" "When it snows so much that school gets canceled and you get to stay home and have fun instead of doing work stuff." Victoria looked at the child's earnest face. "I don't think I've ever had a snow day." "Never?" Emma's eyes went wide. "That's terrible." Daddy, we have to give Victoria a proper snow day. Jake was grinning now. You know what, Em? I think you're right. Victoria, when's the last time you built a snowman? I don't think I ever have. Then it's definitely time. Jake was already reaching for coats and boots. Come on, city girl. Time for snow day 101. An hour later, Victoria found herself in Jake's spare winter gear, laughing harder than she had in years as she tried to roll a snowball big enough for a snowman's body. Emma was a demanding instructor, explaining the proper snow-to-stick ratio and the importance of getting the proportions right. No. Emma giggled as Victoria's snowball fell apart for the third time. You have to pat it, not squeeze it. I'm a real estate developer, not a snow sculptor. Victoria protested, but she was smiling as she said it. Here, let me show you. Jake moved behind her, his hands covering hers as he guided her movements. Feel that? The snow needs to be just the right consistency. Victoria was acutely aware of his closeness, the warmth of his body against her back, the gentle strength of his hands. When was the last time someone had touched her with such casual intimacy? When was the last time she'd let them? I think I've got it, she said, her voice slightly breathless. They worked together for the next hour, building what Emma declared to be the most magnificent snowman in all of Montana. Victoria found herself getting competitive about the construction, insisting they rebuild the base when it proved slightly lopsided. You're a bit of a perfectionist, aren't you? Jake observed, watching her carefully adjust the snowman's head for the 5th time. I prefer detail-oriented, Victoria replied, stepping back to survey their work. But yes, I suppose I am. That's probably what makes you successful in business, among other things. Victoria brushed snow off her borrowed gloves. I don't accept failure. I don't accept good enough. I push until I get what I want. And what do you want? It was the 2nd time he'd asked her a version of that question. And once again, Victoria found herself without a ready answer. She'd spent so many years focused on the next acquisition, the next milestone, the next victory, that she'd never stopped to consider the ultimate goal. I wanted to prove myself, she said finally. I started with nothing, a scholarship kid from a small town, parents who cleaned offices and waited tables. I wanted to show everyone that I could make it, that I could be someone. And did you? Make it, I mean. Victoria gestured at her expensive clothes, her luxury car buried in the snow. I have a net worth of $1.2 billion. I own properties in 12 countries. I employ over 3,000 people. By any measure, I've made it, but, she looked at him sharply. But what? There's a but in your voice. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, watching Emma put the finishing touches on their snowman. But, I'm standing in a stranger's yard, playing in the snow, and I can't remember the last time I felt this present, this connected to something real. Jake didn't respond immediately, just watched his daughter with the kind of attention Victoria had never received from her own parents, who'd been too busy working to notice much of anything. You know what Sarah used to say? Jake said eventually. She said success without happiness is just a fancy word for failure. Your wife sounds like she was very wise. She was. She'd have liked you, I think. Under all that armor, you're not so different from her. I'm nothing like her, Victoria said automatically. I'm selfish, ruthless, focused on money. Are you? Jake turned to face her fully. Because the woman I see built snowmen with a 7-year-old for an hour without checking her phone once. The woman I see washed dishes last night and asked thoughtful questions about my daughter's education. The woman I see looks at my family photos like she's seeing something she's lost, not something she never wanted. His words hit closer to home than Victoria was comfortable with. You don't know me. Maybe not, but I know what I see. Their conversation was interrupted by Emma's delighted squeal. It's snowing again, big fat flakes. Sure enough, the sky had darkened and large snowflakes were beginning to fall. Jake checked his watch and frowned. We should get inside. This is moving in faster than I expected. As they gathered their things, Victoria felt a strange reluctance to return to the cabin. Out here, in the snow, with Emma's laughter ringing in the air and Jake's quiet presence beside her, she felt free. Inside, she'd have to return to being Victoria Sterling, billionaire, businesswoman, woman who'd traded her soul for success. But the storm was intensifying, and they had no choice but to seek shelter. Back in the warmth of the cabin, Emma chattered excitedly about their snowman while Victoria tried to process the morning's revelations. She'd spent so many years building walls, creating distance, that she'd forgotten what it felt like to simply be present with other people. I should try to reach my assistant, she said, pulling out her phone. Still no signal. She'd be worried. I'm sure she understand, Jake said. Sometimes nature has its own schedule. As if to emphasize his point, the wind picked up, howling around the cabin with renewed fury. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. Power's out, Jake said calmly, moving to light several candles and oil lamps. Pretty common up here in big storms. Victoria watched him work, noting how prepared he was, how unruffled by the inconvenience. In her world, a power outage would mean chaos servers down, communications cut, money lost by the minute. Here, it just meant candles and the warmth of the fireplace as afternoon faded to evening. They played board games by lamplight Monopoly, which Emma approached with the same seriousness Victoria brought to actual real estate deals, and Scrabble, where Victoria was surprised to find herself evenly matched by a 7-year-old with an impressive vocabulary. Where did you learn words like quotidian? Victoria asked as Emma played the word for 36 points. Daddy's a teacher, Emma said proudly. He knows lots of big words. Victoria looked at Jake with new interest. You're a teacher? Hi. School English, Jake confirmed. Or I was until Emma was born. Sarah got sick when Em was 3, and someone needed to be home with her. I've been doing ranch work and odd jobs since then, trying to keep us afloat. The pieces clicked into place, the modest cabin, the careful budgeting Victoria had observed, the way Jake had hesitated when Emma asked about staying for dinner. He was struggling, probably for years, but he'd never once made her feel unwelcome or hinted that her presence was a burden. Teaching must have been rewarding, Victoria said carefully. It was. I loved those kids, loved watching them discover what they were capable of. But Emma comes first. Jake's voice was firm, with no trace of regret. I'd make the same choice. Again, Victoria thought about her own choices, the sacrifices she'd made for success, the relationship she'd ended because they interfered with her goals, the family she'd never had because children didn't fit into her 5-year plan. Had she ever put another person's needs before her own ambitions? As Emma prepared for bed, she surprised Victoria with a tight hug. I'm glad you got stuck in the snow, she whispered. You're nice, and you're really good at building snowmen. Watching Jake tuck his daughter into bed, Victoria felt something shift inside her chest. This man had lost his wife, given up his career, and was clearly struggling financially, yet he radiated a contentment that Victoria's billions couldn't buy. He'd found meaning in love and sacrifice and the simple act of being present for the person who mattered most. Later, as they sat by the fire, Jake broke the comfortable silence. Can I ask you something? Of course. What would you do if money wasn't a factor? If you could do anything, be anything, what would make you happy? Victoria considered the question seriously. I used to love teaching too, actually. Before business. School, I tutored kids in my neighborhood. Math, mostly. There was this one girl, Maria, who was convinced she was stupid because she couldn't grasp algebra. I worked with her for months, and when she finally got IT, Victoria smiled at the memory. Her face just lit up. I felt like I'd given her something precious. What happened to that feeling? I guess I convinced myself that making money was more important than making a difference. That success meant power and acquisition, not this. She gestured around the simple room. Not contentment or connection or love. The word hung between them, loaded with possibility. Victoria met Jake's eyes and saw something there that made her heart skip warmth, understanding, and something deeper that she was afraid to name. I should probably get some sleep, she said quickly, standing. Tomorrow the roads might be clear. Victoria. Jake's voice stopped her at the foot of the stairs. For what it's worth, I think you're exactly where you need to be right now. That night, Victoria lay awake on the couch, listening to the storm rage outside and the quiet sounds of the house settling. In 36 hours, her entire perspective had shifted. She'd found something here that all her success couldn't provide: a sense of home, of belonging, of being valued for who she was rather than what she owned. But what could she do with that knowledge? She had a life, a company, and responsibilities. She couldn't just abandon everything for a fantasy of domestic bliss with a man she'd known for 2 days. Could she? The next morning it dawned clear and bright. Victoria woke to the sound of a snowplow rumbling past the cabin, its diesel engine cutting through the mountain silence. Her path back to the world was being cleared, literally and figuratively. Over breakfast, Jake confirmed what she already knew. Roads open. I could drive you to town, help you get your car sorted out. That would be great, Victoria said, trying to inject enthusiasm into her voice. I need to get back. But as she gathered her things, every movement felt wrong. Emma clung to her legs, begging her to stay just one more day. And Victoria found herself wishing she could say yes. Jake loaded her bags into his truck while she said goodbye to Emma, promising to write letters and send postcards from her travels. The little girl made her promise to come back and visit, and Victoria found herself agreeing, though she couldn't imagine when that would be possible. The drive to town was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. When they reached the garage, Jake helped her arrange for a tow truck and a rental car, his presence steady and reassuring, even as Victoria felt her business persona reasserting itself. Well, Jake said as they stood beside the rental car, I guess this is goodbye. I guess it is. Victoria looked at this man who had shown her a different way of living, a different definition of success. Jake, I know, he said quietly. Me too. For a moment, Victoria thought about throwing caution to the wind, about asking him to come with her or offering to stay. But reality crashed back in. She had a company to run, a life to live, obligations she couldn't simply abandon. Instead, she pulled out her business card and pressed it into his hand. If you ever need anything, anything at all. Jake looked at the card, then at her. Will you be okay? Going back to all that? Victoria forced a smile. I'll be fine, I always am. But as she drove away, watching Jake grow smaller in her rear view mirror, Victoria wondered if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. She'd found something real, something precious, and she was walking away from it for the cold comfort of success. 3 hours later, as her phone finally regained signal and began buzzing with dozens of missed calls and urgent messages, Victoria pulled over to the side of the road. She sat there for a long moment, staring at the screen, then slowly, deliberately, she turned the phone off. She had a choice to make, and for the first time in years, she was going to choose with her heart instead of her head, turning the car around. Victoria Sterling headed back toward the mountains, toward a small cabin where a man and his daughter had shown her what it meant to be truly wealthy. She was going to find out if the most important merger of her life was still on the table, because sometimes the greatest fortune really does lie not in what you can acquire, but in what you're willing to give up for love. The end.
Thank you for watching this story unfold with us here on M&A The Story Unfolds. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. We'd love to know where you're watching Leave a comment below and tell us what part of the world you're joining us from. Your support means everything. See you in the next story.